The shocking secret of Zaccheus: why did Jesus command him to come down? But why him? Few knew what truly happened that night. The air was thick with tension. Whispering crowds pressed close, their eyes fixed on a tree where a small figure perched precariously among the branches. Zaccheus. A name that stirred whispers of disdain and disbelief. How had he, a tax collector scorned by his people, climbed up to heights that seemed reserved for the righteous? The moonlight illuminated his anxious face, a mix of hope and shame. Underneath him, the murmurs grew louder. Why is he even up there? A woman scoffed, her voice dripping with contempt. He's a traitor. A man spat, fists clenched tight. They all knew of his betrayals, of coins exchanged behind closed doors and families left destitute. Yet, something in his eyes glimmered amidst the dark. Was it bravery? Desperation? Just then, a figure moved through the crowd. Jesus! The man all had come to see. His presence commanded respect and curiosity. He halted beneath the tree, lifting his gaze to meet Zaccheus. Silence fell, a blanket of anticipation. What would the crowd think? Would they jeer? Would they scream? Instead, Jesus called out, "Zaccheus! Hurry and come down. I must stay at your house today." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a thunderstorm. Why him? Why would Jesus choose a man so despised, whose very name echoed betrayal? The atmosphere crackled with electricity. They watched, breath held, as Zaccheus' hands trembled on the rough bark of the tree. Fear gripped him, but something deeper tugged at his heart. Was it hope? As he clambered down, the whispers turned to shouts. What is he doing? What can he possibly want with that man? Anger mixed with disbelief filled the air. Yet, as he approached Jesus, a flicker of something shifted. The crowd was taken in by the strange unfolding of fate. The ordinary became extraordinary, the hated embraced by grace. Emotions swirled around him. Could forgiveness really be for someone like him? As he stepped closer, the weight of a life marked by wrongdoing chilled him. Yet there was Jesus, welcoming, warm, almost expectant. What was going to happen? What could possibly unfold next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crowd held its breath as Zaccheus reached the ground, every step heavy with an unspoken weight. Their eyes burned with judgment, yet his heart raced with a flicker of hope he hadn't anticipated. Jesus stood before him, eyes full of understanding, a stark contrast to the disdainful glances of those around. There was an undeniable pull, a gentle force that seemed to call out from the depths of Zaccheus' being. As he stood there, trembling yet resolute, a flurry of thoughts spiraled within him. Could he even utter the words stuck in his throat? Would they betray the vulnerability he felt beneath the veneer of bravado? In that brief pause, he felt as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them, Jesus, radiating an illuminating grace, and himself a man cloaked in shame. "Lord," he finally managed, his voice quivering. "I am not worthy to have you in my home." A wave of murmurs erupted through the crowd. The tax collector knew all too well the chapters of his life, riddled with corruption and deceit. Who was he to receive such honor? What could he offer in return for this divine encounter? But as Zaccheus looked into those compassionate eyes, all doubt seemed to dissolve, leaving only a raw yearning for redemption. "I have wronged many, but I want to make it right. If I have stolen from anyone, I will repay them fourfold." The declaration burst forth, seemingly pouring from the deepest recesses of his heart. "Salvation has come to this house today," Jesus replied, immense warmth radiating from his words. The crowd stirred with disbelief, their hearts heavy with disbelief. Could a man so lost ever be found? And in a heartbeat, the ominous atmosphere transformed. Where there had been scorn, now there emerged a profound reflection on mercy, but the question echoed on. What awaited Zaccheus in this newfound grace? As he stood wrapped in the veil of acceptance, life outside the tree continued uncertain and chaotic. People still whispered, anger still surged, yet hope flared like a candle in the darkness of his past. Zaccheus wondered, in his heart of hearts, could he truly believe that he was deserving of such love? The transformation would not come easy, the scars of betrayal wouldn't fade overnight. Yet, standing before Jesus, he sensed that a journey into the light had begun. Was it possible for him to rise from the ashes of dishonor and forge a new legacy, one rooted in integrity? As he turned to face the crowd, every eye on him now held a promise of potential. What would come next, a complete break, or a struggle for acceptance? In that moment, he realized that his path could intertwine with the love and forgiveness that Jesus embodied. But many questions loomed still. Could the whispers of the crowd ever fade into forgiveness? Would he ever escape the shadows of his past? And how does one step fully into grace while still standing amidst their sins? What was the true price of transformation? As the murmurs of the crowd swelled and fractured, Zaccheus felt the weight of their scrutiny bearing down on him. Each glance felt like a stone, yet the warmth of Jesus' presence shielded him like a cloak. It was a peculiar sensation, feeling both exposed and sheltered in the same breath. While liberation swirled around him, the coast of his past clung tightly, as if to mock the promise of his new beginning. What now? He thought, his heart still racing from the encounter. The air hung heavy with unspoken questions, each one a tether to his former life. He shifted his weight, striving to find balance between the man he had been and the man he longed to become. What do I do next? Jesus seemed to sense the storm brewing within him. Zaccheus, he spoke softly, yet with authority, today marks the beginning of a new life. Your desire for change has stirred the heavens. But transformation is not merely spoken, it is lived. The weight of each word sank deep into Zaccheus' soul, but they also kicked up reflections of his past, moments when he blurred the lines between right and wrong. Go then, and start with your neighbors, with those you have wronged, Jesus continued, for in their forgiveness lies your own. Our connections with one another define the essence of this grace you seek. The journey to redemption is walked hand in hand with those you've hurt, and only through them will you find the path to true freedom. Zaccheus thought of the faces that filled his memories, angry patrons robbed of their dignity, families broken by his greed, the very people who stood now circling him with disapproving gazes. How could he approach them? What words could capture the reality of his remorse? Every step toward them felt like an insurmountable climb, as if he were returning to the tree from which he had just come down. Lord, how can I ever seek their forgiveness? He finally breathed, vulnerability spilling from his lips. How can I undo what has been done? Jesus met his gaze without flinching, relentless in compassion. Forgiveness, Zaccheus, begins within. It is a gift yet ignited by sincerity. Seek not perfection, for even the most noble paths are paved with stumbling stones. Open your heart, invite their wounds to heal among you, and the rest shall follow. A hush fell over the crowd as they absorbed these words, some with scorn, others with curiosity. Deep inside, however, there was a low rumble of unrest and understanding that perhaps, what lay before Zaccheus was a greater courage than mere repentance. It was the strength to confront the very fabric of his being and the ripple of his choices. Reluctantly, he turned from the one who offered salvation to the judging eyes of those who once feared him. How could he stand in front of them, a man who had wrapped himself in a cloak of dishonesty for so long? Yet, in his vulnerability, he sensed a flicker of hope. The whispers of his past could indeed be silenced by the sincerity of his future. As he began to step away from Jesus toward the crowd, conflict wove through him. What if they refuse to accept my gesture? He wondered. What if their hearts remain hard as stone? Jesus must have read the questions racing through him, because he gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Remember, Zaccheus, the power of transformation does not rest in others' responses but in your own willingness to embrace honesty, humility, and love. His heart thudded. What was love if not a two-way road? What if he offered his hand, but no one took it? Anxieties twined themselves around his spirit, urging him to recoil, but he knew that retreating took as much strength as facing forward, and so he stood on the precipice of his past, glancing back at the man who climbed the tree in search of something elusive. The echoes of his former life still drummed in his ears, and the gnawing question remained, was he truly prepared to rebuild amidst the wreckage he had left? Zaccheus prepared himself to step forward but hesitated. How would he navigate this path of restoration that lay before him? In the depths of his contemplation, yet another question emerged: was the road to redemption one marked by solitary steps, or did it flourish through communal healing? And how much faith would it take from him to believe that others might also yearn for forgiveness? As Zaccheus took a deep breath, he felt the heaviness of the air transform into a fine mist of anticipation enclosing him. Each pulse of his heart reverberated with memories of deceit, echoes of laughter aimed at his expense, and the stinging whispers of betrayal from those he had wronged. Yet here, in this moment defined by Jesus' words, a seed of transformation nested within him, yearning to take root. He moved toward the crowd, feeling the gazes sharpen as he advanced. Some faces were contorted with disdain, others with perplexity, yet mixed among them were those who simply looked on, perhaps waiting to witness this man they once feared. What bravery it took to exchange the chains of wealth for a path of humility! Was that his calling? Zaccheus, you are not alone. A voice called from the back, trembling with uncertainty yet infused with the warmth of recognition. It was his neighbor, Miriam, a woman whose family had suffered under his oppressive taxes. Their laughter turned to silence in the shadows of his greed. If anyone bore the scars of his wrongdoings, it was her, yet here she stood, braving the tide of judgment. Her eyes, though wary, sparkled with a flicker of hope. If you're here to make amends, then speak. Speak to us of what you've done and what's in your heart, she beckoned, bold yet vulnerable. The crowd murmured, the energy shifting like the wind before a storm. Would they hear what he had to say? Zaccheus halted and swallowed hard. The moment was upon him, demanding authenticity. I have taken what was not mine, he began, his voice cracking under the weight of truth. In my pursuit of wealth, I have robbed you of joy, and of trust. The air grew thick. He could feel the tension unspooling among them as faces flickered with recognition, their pain still raw underneath the layers of time. He pressed on, emboldened by the presence of the one who had seen the depth of his heart. I've betrayed not just you, but also myself. I allowed greed to overshadow the value of our bond as neighbors. Murmurs transformed into whispers, weaving themselves into a tapestry of mixed response, a desire to believe yet a fear of being uttered in foundation-shaking truth. I cannot change what has been, he continued, his breath quickening. But I wish to start anew. I seek your forgiveness. I vow to restore what I have taken. For each wrong, I am willing to give back fourfold. The murmuring intensified. Some faces softened in contemplation, while others remained firm, encased in their bitterness. Their silence was a testament to the weight of his words. An echo that danced on their wound like a moth on a flame. Then another voice called out, one laden with the burden of the past. You think it's that easy, Zaccheus? It was Eli, a local merchant, voice trembling with emotion. You think you can simply speak words and that will erase years of pain? The challenge hung heavily in the air, striking a chord within Zaccheus. Could words ever truly bridge that chasm carved by betrayal? I know it cannot, he replied, heart racing. But I will labor to prove my sincerity, to reconcile the depths of my errors through my actions. Will you allow me the chance to show this to you? Zaccheus' determination surged as he absorbed the tumultuous reactions around him. The ache of doubt was evident as he watched Ella's brow crease in thought, but it mingled with the flickers of curiosity in the eyes of others. They were contemplating, perhaps reflecting on their own grievances, how long they had carried the burden of mistrust. Actions belong to the one who issues the apology, a female voice echoed softly from the side. Sarah, another victim of Zaccheus' ambition, eyes shimmering with a depth of pain. But how can we know you've truly changed? How can we trust a man who spun webs of deceit? An unanswerable question floated in the air. Trust built on a fragile foundation required time, patience, and relentless authenticity. Zaccheus wrestled with the truth of it, realizing in that moment that the journey towards redemption would not dissolve into a single plea or promise. He would tell his story, but more importantly, he would live it in front of them. As the crowd remained a swirl of uncertain faces, he knew a spark ignited not merely out of remorse but from the shared humanity they all possessed. Everyone in this moment did not merely witness his struggle, they were part of a collective pilgrimage towards understanding, towards healing. Will you show us dignity? Time and again came the question from Miriam, her tone soft, yet it dripped with skepticism. Can we trust you not to disappear back into the shadows? And in the depth of that query lay the core of his dilemma. How fragile was the fabric of trust, yet how beautiful it could be to weave together anew with threads of sincerity. But how could he begin to mend what felt irreparably torn? As he stood there, the crowd around him still murmuring, he felt a dawning realization: perhaps the path to forgiveness is not solitary, but a collective journey marked by vulnerability, courage, and the faith that change could genuinely thrive. What is it that stirs the hearts of those who have been wronged to open themselves to forgiveness, and how can a community stand together in that vulnerability? As the murmurs in the crowd began to settle, a heavy silence enveloped them again. Each breath taken was like a shared heartbeat, synchronized with the weight of unspoken fears and hopes. Zaccheus stood before them, exposed yet determined, knowing that the new chapter of his life began not just with words but with the willingness to bear the burden of his past. Before I learned of my missteps, I never understood the depth of our connections, he recalled with a glance toward the echoing silence of the trees around them. I was blind to the joy that miracles of community can offer. In pursuing riches, I overlooked the wealth of friendship right before me. As he shared his reflections, it became evident that this was more than a mere confession, it was a revelation about the nature of human existence and the delicate thread connecting each person. They all bore their scars, some hidden deeper than others, yet here they stood, wrestling with the question of whether transformation was indeed possible. His gaze caught Miriam's once more, her expression was a blend of cautious hope and lingering uncertainty. The stories in their lives, linked together like a tapestry, began to unfurl. Miriam, he continued gently, your strength to stand here today means that hope lives in spite of the pain. I acknowledge the weight of your suffering. If it took a loss, I will labor to bring it back even if it takes a lifetime. As he spoke, a soft breeze pushed through the gathering, as if nature itself was contemplating the authenticity of his promise. He sensed eyes on him, peering through the layers of their history with a blend of doubt and curiosity. Would they embrace vulnerability in return? Then, Eli stepped forward again, his rigid demeanor contrasting with the raw emotions radiating from the others. And what if this is just a mask, Zaccheus? A game to gain virtue through the guilt of your past actions? What if your intentions are not true? Ella's voice trembled with a dark curiosity that belied his own scars. Zaccheus took a step toward him, and with earnestness, responded, I cannot change how you see me today, Eli. I must earn that view through grace and labor. I realize I cannot demand your trust. I am here to extend an invitation, raw and open, for us to embark on this journey together. He turned his focus back to the crowd, scanning the faces, each one unique yet tethered in shared experiences. We are more than the roles we assume. I am not just a tax collector, I am a man yearning for connection. And each of you carries a story that deserves to be heard. The stillness lingered, and the ground around them felt charged with a newfound possibility. Yet, even in this moment of potential healing, Zaccheus understood that stepping away from the shadows of his past would not come without confrontation of self-doubt and resistance. But then, amidst the uncertainty, a flicker broke through. A younger boy, wide-eyed and curious, pushed through the legs of the crowd to stand beside Zaccheus. Would you really give back fourfold? He asked, brimming with innocent enthusiasm, eyes sparkling with intrigue. Within that single question lay the essence of their communal journey. The boy wasn't merely seeking financial restitution, he was grasping at the hope within their struggles and the potential for honest relationships that could flourish from those broken pieces. Should I? Zaccheus replied softly, crouching to meet the boy's gaze. Imagine a world where generosity flows as freely as the sea. The warmth of giving must transform the heart more than the return of material wealth. The crowd swelled with a mix of murmurs again, and he felt a shift in the atmosphere, a glimmering shroud of acceptance stirring amongst them. But uncertainty lingered like a heavy fog. For every inch of fragile trust earned, there were works to be done, walls to be dismantled. As Zaccheus observed, time seemed suspended, echoing the truth that redemption was not a single moment but a series of choices made in humility and reflection. Could they allow their hearts to cast aside bitterness and embrace the hope that lay beneath carefully guarded scars? And in listening to one another's stories, could they weave a new tapestry of connection that included both forgiveness and the promise of growth? The profound challenge remained, not only for him but for every soul standing there, wrestling with their own call to forgiveness. What defines true transformation? An act of restitution, or is it embedded in the steadfast commitment to share the journey together, entwined, through the pain of the past towards the light of understanding? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the faces of the crowd, a weighty stillness fell over them. Zaccheus stood there, heart pounding, aware that the moment was fragile. He sensed an undercurrent of anticipation, a pulse that thrummed with questions left unasked, as their collective breath held tight the secrets they had shared. Forgiveness may be a distant shore for many of us, he murmured, voice barely above a whisper, but I stand on this path, hoping to reach you, all of you, in time. A murmur passed through the assembly, but it was Ella's piercing gaze that locked into Zaccheus, demanding clarity. What if your journey is but a veil for darker ambitions? Are you truly willing to bear the weight of our pain, or is this a mask to hide another ambition? Zaccheus' heart sank as he acknowledged Ella's fear, a fear that stemmed from deep-seated hurt. Every sin has its roots, he replied earnestly. And the humility needed to confront them might bear fruit found only in reconciliation. As he spoke, memories flooded through him, the coins clinking in his pocket, the isolation of his wealth, and the lonely nights that followed his gains. Those lonesome victories melted away in the warmth of shared humanity. He took a fortifying breath as he stood, no longer the isolated figure he once was. Let us not stand divided by the weight of what has come before, but instead, gather strength from what may yet be, he invited, gesturing to their shared ground. The road ahead is bound to wounds we all carry, but it is in this journey that we may find solace together. A well-respected elder in the crowd, Ananias, stepped forth, his expression weathered yet wise. You speak of journeys and healing, Zaccheus. But how do we know your transformation is true? How do we know that this isn't just another elaborate facade? Zaccheus looked into Ananias' eyes, emotions swirling in the space between them. I offer myself not as a solution but as a testament. I do not ask for blind faith. Instead, let our actions speak volumes. Let your hearts guide you as we engage in this humble rebirth. The crowd shifted, a flicker of understanding threading through like light penetrating through thick clouds. But still, remnants of doubt lingered, and Eli retorted, words can nestle comfortably in the heart, but actions are what will illuminate the truth. When will we see this change? Zaccheus felt the weight of the challenge, a crucible wherein truth was tempered by the fires of skepticism. Bring forth your first requests. What shall I do to prove the roots of change? He implored earnestly, a humble disposition spreading through the air like dusk settling softly upon the earth. From the back of the assembly, an older woman spoke, her voice filled with poignant clarity. Will you confront those you have wronged, Zaccheus? Will you hear their stories, and not just from your perspective? His heart clenched, for he knew that listening required more than sympathy, it demanded vulnerability, the courage to witness his actions through their eyes. Yes, he replied simply, this weight I will carry. To hear their sorrows is a necessary step toward remedy. As the night began to drape the sky in dark hues, the first stars twinkled into view, illuminating the ground where many stood. There was a spark of courage ignited in each heart, a remembrance of their own struggles to forgive. Zaccheus could feel the tides of change shifting, but his internal compass still wavered in the face of unproven trust. Would he indeed be able to reach the depths he was summoned toward? Could each individual there find the strength to face their fears in the light of this unfolding story? The air shimmered with possibility and doubt intertwined, and as their eyes met under the dawning night, a silent question perked up in the shadows, looking for answers. What binds us to our past if not the threads of choice we weave in the fabric of our shared humanity? And how steep is the cost of reconciliation that each of us must pay to unearth our deepest truths? As the first shadows of night drifted across the gathering, a profound silence enveloped them, the kind that urged reflection and contemplation. Zaccheus stood firm, feeling the weight of expectation press against him like the night itself. He had invited a challenging invitation to face the truths that loomed in the corners of his past, and now he sensed the responsibility was heavier than he had anticipated. Ella's voice reverberated in his ears, reminding him of the skepticism that skulked among his neighbors. When will we see this change? It was a question echoing through the hearts of many, a question that struck to the core of who he had been and who he was trying to become. Thinking back to the moment he encountered Jesus, Zaccheus closed his eyes, allowing the memory to wash over him, the way the man approached him, the compassion etched into every line of his face, the way he had called him down from the tree with purpose. There was a divine invitation layered in those simple words. Why had Jesus chosen him? What lay hidden beneath the surface of that decision? Why me? He murmured to himself, a question that felt both heavy and light. It wandered in his mind, weaving through the worries of the evening. As he opened his eyes, the faces around him flickered with anticipation and skepticism. The stillness was broken when Ananias, the elder, spoke again. Before we can move forward, Zaccheus, consider your first step. Who among us have you wronged most grievously? The question struck deep, stirring feelings of regret. Names surfaced unbidden: the merchant whose goods he had overtaxed, the widow whose meager savings he had siphoned, the families who had struggled while he prospered. Each memory was a knot in his insides, a barrier made of his own making. I shall seek out each of them, Zaccheus declared, his voice gaining confidence with every word. I will listen to their stories, I will hear their pain, and I will offer my reparations. His heart raced at the scope of what lay ahead, wondering if he could bear the weight of each soul he had impacted. Eli, skeptical yet intrigued, furrowed his brow. What if they do not accept you? What if they shun the man you have become? How will you respond when faced with your failures? Zaccheus felt a shiver travel down his spine. The idea of rejection loomed large, ominous like a thundercloud before a storm. Your questions are just and worthy, he said, finding strength in the honesty of the moment. But I cannot fear the future. Each step toward them is a step toward healing, even if they cast me aside. As murmurs spread through the crowd, an unexpected surge of emotion filled him. Standing there, under the fragile light of stars emerging in the early night sky, a question rose from deep within the fabric of his spirit: what would true reconciliation cost, not just for him, but for the ones he had wronged? Zaccheus watched as the people around him shifted uneasily, caught between hope and hesitation. Their gazes were locked, not just on him, but on the possibilities unfolding in the shadow of a dark past. He felt the gravity of the moment swell, a moment pregnant with the promise of redemption interspersed with the fear of unresolved pain. In the distance, the laughter of children playing chased its way to his ears, wisps of innocence untouched by the sting of betrayal. How could his actions lead to a brighter horizon for them? And what continued to bind him to his past? Was it simply guilt, or was it also the whispered hope for tomorrow? Bathed in the starlit calm, Zaccheus lingered on that profound uncertainty, as the questions spiraled around him, echoing in the spaces of his heart and wresting clear answers from the shadows of his yearning. What transformative power lies in embracing the discomfort of our past, and can it truly pave the way for a purposeful future? As the night deepened, a solemn contemplation enveloped Zaccheus and the gathering. The air felt thick with the gravity of repentance, while the stars above twinkled like distant promises waiting to be claimed. Zaccheus stood at a crossroads, his heart thrumming with a rhythm of urgency and fear. As murmurs swirled around him, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes once more, surrendering to the echo of Eli's skepticism. What if they do not accept you? The question tethered his mind to the implications of his choices. Each soul he sought to approach felt like a lost thread weaving through his life story, a tapestry frayed and torn by selfishness. Could he even begin to mend the fabric of their lives? Listen, he said, raising his hands slightly, imploring silence from the crowd. What I did was wrong, and I cannot change the past. But I can approach each of them with an honest heart and an open ear. I will lay bare my transgressions, expose the wounds I've inflicted, and seek to understand their pain. As he spoke, not only did he strive to transform others' struggles, but he felt something shift within himself. Was this the very first glimpse of redemption? Ananias observed him keenly, the elder's eyes reflecting wisdom forged through years of experience. Redemption is but a seed, Zaccheus. It requires nurturing, and perhaps, the hardest soil to till is your own heart. Zaccheus felt the truth of those words settle into his bones. Realizing the work ahead would not be swift nor easy stirred a quiet unrest within him. The cleansing he sought wasn't merely transactional, it lay entwined with relational intricacies that spanned beyond mere restitution. How could he script his narrative anew without recreating the same patterns of separation and sorrow? A rustle from the back of the crowd caught his attention. It was a woman, her face pale, and a deep sadness traced the lines around her eyes. "I am the widow," she called out, her voice breaking like brittle twigs. "You took from me in my hour of need. And what can you offer now that will undo the suffering you caused?" The questions from the crowd grew louder, shifting from skepticism to an intensity that felt electric. Zaccheus met her gaze, recognizing her not as just a figure from his past but a living testament to his failures. "I cannot undo the hurt," he admitted, struggling to hold her sorrow in his heart. "But I stand before you willing to bear your story. Share your pain, and let me learn what you have lost." Tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice remained firm. "And if my grief cannot be absolved? If no measure can heal the ache you have caused?" Zaccheus' heart ached at her words. "Then I shall carry it with me. I will honor it every day moving forward. I will change my life for the betterment of others, and perhaps through my actions, some light will seep into the shadows." His resolve washed over him like a cool breeze after a long drought. Each step toward reconciliation demanded courage, and perhaps this was the crucible through which his character would be forged anew. As the widow considered his earnestness, another figure stepped forward, a merchant he had wronged, his brow furrowed with distrust. "Words are easily spoken, Zaccheus, yet much heavier is the burden of trust. Who is to say you will not revert to your old ways once your conscience is soothed?" The weight of doubt hung palpably in the air, the crowd swelled with murmurs, as if the ancient struggle between faith and skepticism rose to the surface. What would it take to rekindle trust after betrayal? In that moment, Zaccheus felt the burden morph from individual to collective. The repercussions of his actions rippled far beyond his own experience. They were woven into the community, into the very fabric of their interactions and their shared histories. Standing rooted in that uncertainty, he realized he had stepped into an uncharted territory, one where hope and uncertainty danced together in a fragile balance. His journey had begun, opening a path toward the unknown, yet laden with possibility. As the cool night breeze rustled the leaves around them, a new question unfolded in Zaccheus' heart, whispering softly against the tumult of his thoughts. What if the true process of healing lies not in the assurance of acceptance but in the courage to embrace our mistakes and the journey they lead us on? As dawn approached, the first light of day stretched across the horizon, casting gentle hues of gold and pink upon a world still awakening. The gathering around Zaccheus remained tense, caught between the weight of his confessions and their lingering reservations. Each face stirred with emotion, anger, sorrow, distrust. Yet within the throng, there also flickered a whisper of hope. The murmurs quieted as he stood before them, his heart a battleground of conflicting desires. He longed to erase the pain he had caused, yet he knew that his words alone could not suffice. It was action that would speak volumes, action that would carve a new path through the landscape of his remorse. With a steadying breath, he turned to the widow once more. "Let me accompany you," he offered. "Let me walk alongside you as you recount your loss. Share with me the untold stories of your grief, so I may understand the heartache that has lingered in your soul. I may not bring back what was lost, but I promise to honor the memory of what you cherished." As her eyes met his, uncertainty flickered across her features. "And what if your presence reminds me of what was taken? What if your remorse only serves to reopen wounds that are still festering?" Zaccheus shifted his stance, understanding the depths of her fears. "I cannot promise that it will be easy. Healing often gathers in the shadows before the light can pierce through. But I am willing to endure that discomfort with you, to confront the memories I have inflicted upon others. I am no longer the man who saw only his own needs." Before she could respond, a voice interrupted the merchant who had first questioned him. Forgive me, but words of change are cheap, Zaccheus. We need more than intentions, we need witness to your transformation. Zaccheus nodded, feeling the urgency behind the merchant's words. Then let my actions bear witness. If you allow me, I will not only seek to listen but also to serve. I will give back not only to those I have wronged but to the community as a whole. His heart raced with inspiration. I will take from my resources, diminish my wealth, and join hands with the forgotten in this town. The merchant raised an eyebrow, skepticism still clouding his demeanor. And what if it is merely an effort to soothe your own spirit? How can we know that your change is genuine and not just a fleeting attempt to stay the hand of judgment? This concern rippled through the crowd, bubbling with unvoiced anxieties. Zaccheus felt the weight of their eyes, each glance like a thread weaving into his resolve. Trust, like faith, must be nurtured, must be earned, he said, searching the faces reflecting back at him. I ask for your patience as I engage in this journey. Let me show you that I am capable of becoming a different man. The widow's expression softened just a fraction. Yet her voice remained steady. Words are seeds, but action is the soil in which they must be rooted. Are you prepared for the labor that will follow? I am ready, he affirmed, a conviction blossoming within him. I will labor not just for my own spirit but for the upliftment of our community. Those whom I have hurt deserve more than my apologies. They deserve my service, my respect, and the restoration of what I have broken. As he spoke, the rising sun illuminated the faces of the crowd, casting away the shadows of night and revealing the gentle features of those he had once seen only as mere subjects of his calculations. Each carried their own scars, each was a universe of pain, forgiveness, and possibility. For a fleeting moment, Zaccheus dared to fantasize about the dawn of a new relationship with these people. Could he really nurture the seeds of change? Could he become a part of their lives' intricate tapestry without straining the threads that held it together? Just as he began to envision a pathway laid out before him, the faint call of a stranger disrupted his thoughts. From the edge of the gathering emerged a man, tall and stern, bearing an authority that loomed heavy in the air. Zaccheus, you are not the only one who needs redemption, the stranger declared, and the crowd fell silent once more. Zaccheus's heart raced, curiosity piquing as an unthought revelation settled in. What depths of pain existed within this stranger? And how did this person's own quest for redemption intertwine with his? As Zaccheus awaited the words that might tumble forth, he pondered, in the tapestry of redemption, do we always seek it alone, or are we called to journey with others whose paths are similarly woven with loss and change? As dawn fully embraced the horizon, revealing golden hues that spread warmth across the gathering, the stranger's gaze remained fixed on Zaccheus, a voice heavy with both challenge and empathy. I have seen the chains that bind you. But tell me, how do you plan to take the weight of your past and transform it into something beautiful not just for yourself, but for us all? Zaccheus felt the scrutiny of the crowd, the lingering doubts woven into the fabric of their collective experiences. The moment hung suspended, a fragile bridge between the man he had once been and the man he longed to become. In that pause, clarity pierced through him. The truth crystallized, illuminating the way forward. Redemption is not a solitary journey, he declared, voice rising with intensity and heartfelt sincerity. It is a shared pilgrimage toward healing. We are all broken in our own ways, and in recognizing our collective struggles, we can lift one another beyond the weight of our pasts. As he spoke, the air thickened with an emotion wrapped in the truths unearthing within them all. Eyes widened, and heads began to nod slowly, echoing the acknowledgement of shared humanity. Zaccheus reached for the stranger, inviting him further into their midst while his heart thudded a rhythm of courage. What story do you carry? Share it so that we may begin to understand one another better. The stranger, taken aback yet softened by the vulnerability displayed, stepped closer. I was once a man of pride, he confessed, his voice thick with hidden burdens. A leader of men who believed strength lay in power, dismissing the hearts I trampled in my quest for authority. They called me a tyrant. The word hung heavily, but the crowd listened, captivated by his revelation. Underneath my armor, I was merely a boy yearning for acknowledgement. His eyes darted around the assembly, searching for connection. Your story resonates, Zaccheus. I too am here, seeking redemption for my own trespasses. Perhaps we can uncover a path together if we dare to look beyond the wounds and lift each other up." Zaccheus felt a surge of warmth and hope cascade through the crowd. Let us embrace our stories, our shared humanity, where the meeting of truths can mend what once tore us apart. I stand here fully aware of my past and the pain I have inflicted. If you can join me, we can begin to weave a bond that carries weight not just in sorrow but in purpose and understanding. Others began to step forward, each sharing fragments of their own struggles, a tapestry of tribulations interlaced with the intricate designs of hardship, pride, and redemption. They wove a dialogue of authenticity, each voice lending strength to the other, bridging the abyss that had once felt insurmountable. "What if I cannot trust you?" Eli's voice broke through. "What if your promises fade away?" Zaccheus met his gaze unflinchingly. "Trust must be built, brick by brick, through actions that shine in commitment. If we stumble, we must rise and labor harder. Redemption will not be a moment but a continuum," the murmurs transformed into whispers of agreement, the seeds of sincerity being sown amid the swelling hope blossoming against doubt. Together, they felt emboldened by their shared vulnerability, realizing that the path to wholeness lay not only in Zaccheus' transformation but in all of theirs. As the sun ascended progressively higher in the sky, pouring light upon their newfound commitment to one another, Zaccheus turned toward the crowd, inhaling deeply. "Let us forge a new legacy, a communal restoration where our stories, our truths, and our desire to forgive lay the foundation for our future. I will work with each of you, side by side, as we untangle the thorns that once stifled our trust." That he outstretched his hands, reaching for those closest, Miriam, Eli, and even the stranger, inviting their collaboration. One by one, as hands met in firm grasps, the crowd felt an unseen thread weaving them as one. This act, simple yet profound, stitched together the remnants of their disconnection, a testament to their collective resilience. Tears glistened in the eyes around them, the weight of shared understanding surpassing the scars of betrayal. In that moment, every heartbeat drummed to the same rhythm of hope, the recognition that they stood at the cusp of transformation. As they joined hands, a chorus rang out, echoed by Zaccheus's heart. "We shall embrace the arduous labor of rebuilding, reveling in the beauty of restoration, knowing that true change follows the footprints of courage." In that awakening dawn, where shadows fled from the light, a revelation surged forth, illuminating not just their faces but the very souls entwined within the collective journey. They were no longer merely individuals seeking redemption, they were a community, woven together through forgiveness, emboldened by love, evolving beyond hate, striving to forge a future where healing blossomed and hope flourished. And as they stood united, with the first light of the sun striking against their backs, they realized, the true miracle lay not in the singular redemption of Zaccheus alone but in the profound connection they crafted together, a testament of grace, love, and restoration that would reach beyond that moment into infinity, inviting all to partake in the beautiful journey of becoming.